If you're watching this video, you're probably interested in learning Japanese. And why wouldn't you be? There's so much out there that makes the language so rewarding to learn. And I've been learning Japanese for years now, and I remember what it was like when I first started. It was a little confusing, and there were a lot of different resources out there, and I wasn't sure where to begin. So hopefully in this video, I'm able to share with you a few of my mistakes and experiences to help you get started if you're not sure where to go. I've thought about it for a little bit, and I've come up with 5 things that I think you need to do to lay the best foundation for yourself to begin learning Japanese. So let's start. Number 1, Hiragana. Hiragana is one of the main writing systems in Japanese, and it's probably the one you will use the most starting off. With Hiragana, you can pronounce every single sound in Japanese. There are 46 characters in Hiragana compared to 26 in the English alphabet. The difference being, Hiragana isn't an alphabet, it's more of a syllabary. Take, for example, the English letter A. Okay, sometimes it's pronounced A, sometimes it's A, sometimes it's A, sometimes it's O. It all depends on where in the word it is and where the speaker is from. Compare that with the Hiragana character Ka. It is only ever pronounced Ka. No matter if it's in the word kaze, azoku, it is always pronounced Ka. So how do you go about learning Hiragana? Well, there are a few ways. One way would be to find an app on your phone. There are plenty of apps out there that will teach you Hiragana as well as the way to write them, their pronunciation, and how to read them. Similarly, you could just go online. I've linked an article below that goes through every single Hiragana and just gives you a little fun story or image to help you memorize it. The other way is just to go to Google Images, search for Hiragana chart or Wikipedia even, and just pen and paper, write them down until you remember it. However you do it, you need to get this Hiragana in your mind so you can start reading and thinking in Japanese. Number 2, start exposing yourself to Japanese media. If you're a fan of anime, you'll probably already be doing this, even though you'll hear it said, anime isn't strictly speaking normal day-to-day Japanese. It is still, in some forms, depending on what you're watching, Japanese. So, even if you're not a fan of anime, getting yourself tuned into what Japanese sounds like when spoken by a Japanese native speaker is a great way to get started and get the ball rolling and get your brain in that sort of Japanese mode. If you're not into anime, that's fine too. There's also movies, games, dramas. One thing I like to do when I'm not in Japan is put on the ANNnews channel. They have a 24-hour live stream of Japanese news, and you can just put that on and listen to people speak Japanese in the background and just let it go. Obviously they're news announcers, so the pronunciation is quite clear. The thing about this is, particularly in the early stages of Japanese learning, you're not going to understand everything, or you probably won't understand anything in your first beginning, but it's just a matter of getting your brain tuned into what Japanese sounds like, its rhythms, its patterns, and eventually you'll start picking things up. I remember once I was reviewing words in a textbook, and I came across the word kokusai kanke, which means international relations. Then I was listening to some news, didn't understand any of it for the longest time, and then all of a sudden, kokusai kanke, and they kept talking, and I knew what that was. This one obscure word I thought I'd never use, and then it came up. And as you learn Japanese, you'll hear things like that more and more until you're able to discern sentences and grammar points, and you're able to start understanding slowly what's being said. Number 3, start building some vocabulary. There are a few different ways to do this. One popular way is using an app like Duolingo or Memrise or Lingodeer, getting on that and just starting to use some of the beginner levels just to go through the simple beginning vocab. Some textbooks will teach this as well. It's up to you how you want to do it. The thing I like about the apps is that most of them are free to use to start, and during that free period they'll teach you your greetings, they'll teach you numbers, they'll teach you how to introduce yourself and talk about who you are. And so you get that sort of beginner vocabulary that if you build it then, once you start learning grammar, you can start using phrases you've learned or words you've learned to start saying things in Japanese and exploring and building your own sentences. Try one of those, or finding a flashcard deck online, putting it into Anki, There are lots of ways you can do it. You can even go look for, I'm sure, top 100 most common Japanese words, write them down, memorize those. Particularly if you've done hiragana already, you can write them out in hiragana and you can use that as like a flashcard system to memorize them. I would say start building vocabulary is an important step. Number 4, if you haven't started doing this already, learning katakana will be an important step in your Japanese learning journey. What are katakana? So katakana essentially cover the same set of sounds as hiragana, but they have a different shape. They're effectively hiragana's edgy cousin because they are edgy here. They have more edges. Is that what I'm trying to say? Basically, this is the hiragana ka, and this is the katakana ka. They look pretty similar, but that is not all of them. Other ones, for example, this is the hiragana for a, and this is the katakana for a. They're different, but they sound the same. So hiragana and katakana cover the same set of sounds. So why are they used? Well, one main use that you'll see early on, particularly if your name isn't a Japanese name, is writing foreign borrowed words, or just foreign words in general, in katakana. So you'll want to start learning katakana pretty early on as well. Number 5, get yourself a good beginner textbook. Once you've got these foundations laid, you can start to get into textbooks. Some of them will expect you to already know things like hiragana and a few basic phrases, like the Genki books. I first started using the Genki books when I got into Japanese seriously. I worked through Genki 1 and 2, and the Genki books were, to their credit, the thing that got me to use Japanese first. The first conversation I had with a Japanese person in Japan in Japanese was using phrases I'd learned in the Genki books. I asked somebody where the library was because my Airbnb was near the library. As it turned out, when they replied to me, I couldn't understand what they were saying at the time, but hey, it broke that barrier for me, and I was able to use Japanese more and more throughout that trip, to the point where now I can converse with someone in Japanese, which is pretty cool. So Genki books are an option for you if you like to look at them and they work for you. Another book series I would recommend is Japanese from Zero. Were I studying Japanese again, I probably would start with those books because they teach you things like hiragana from the beginning. It literally expects you to know nothing and builds upon that. Well, you need to be able to read English at least, but beyond that, it's Japanese from Zero. So those books are probably Japanese from Zero or Genki. Either one of those books will give you a bit of a good foundation to build upon later on. Whichever one you choose is up to you. I've put links below if you want to purchase either of those books. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to be uploading regular videos about the learning Japanese process, my experiences, my mistakes, and all that sort of stuff to this channel. So if you want to see more of that sort of thing, it'd be great if you could subscribe and like the video and, I don't know, leave a nice comment with a smiley face. I'd enjoy that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.